Let's play a little game. It's going to take 30 seconds. How fast can a CEO convince you that his own company and the entire AI industry as a whole is in a bubble? Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, debatably the most important, fastest growing AI software company on the planet. You go first.
Question I've heard all week and hanging over the market is how can a company with 13 billion in revenues make 1.4 trillion of spend commitments?
Very, very reasonable question.
And you've heard the criticism,
First
Sam.
of all, we're doing well more revenue than that. Second of all, Brad, if you want to sell your shares, I'll find you a buyer. I just, enough. Like, is one of those people that are writing these ridiculous OpenAI is about to go out of business and, whatever. I would love to tell them they could just short the stock, and I would love to see them get burned on that.
Okay, so that was a perfect, well-composed answer from our friend Sam Altman. He definitely answered the question as to how they can afford such spending with such little money. He didn't freak out or anything like that. Completely calm answer. Definitely and totally not concerning at all how defensive he's getting there. All right, Palantir CEO Alex Karp, your turn. We need some bounce back here. We need some confirmation.
If the numbers weren't there, great, be my guest. But then the numbers are there. So then it's not even clear he's actually shorting us. It's probably just, how do I get my position out and not look like a fool? I don't know. As far as I can tell, the two companies he's shorting are the ones making all the money, which is super weird. Like, the idea that chips and ontology is what you want to short is batshit crazy.
All right, so two CEOs that seem very composed, even though they've really already won. I mean, they're both billionaires at this point. It really doesn't matter if, say, Michael Burry is shorting Palantir. If anything, you can just go on CNBC and say, yeah, we're doing really well, and let Burry do whatever he wants. He'll get burned if he's wrong. And Sam Altman gets really defensive when asked a simple question about AI spending, which, to his credit, he probably gets like every day at this point. So the frustration's probably building, and that was just a spillover of it that we just watched. So first things first, we gotta address the elephant in the room here, and that's OpenAI and Sam Altman. After all, anytime you're gonna investigate the AI bubble, it's best to start there. Because I know you've probably seen this chart at this point, but again, it just shows us that there's a lot of money flowing everywhere between just about every single company that exists in the AI space. And at some point you start to ask the question like, hey, where is OpenAI going to get all this money from? Right now they're losing a lot of money. So how do they plan on spending what they're pledging right now, about $1.4 trillion? Where's that money going to come from? And as Alex Karp was mentioning, it doesn't seem like the best idea to be shorting, say, your Nvidias and your Palantirs, mainly because CapEx from these big tech companies, your Microsofts, your Amazons, your Googles, is absolutely skyrocketing. I mean, we're seeing numbers jump from 76 billion to 376 billion over 2025, 2027. We're talking about like a 500% increase. We've seen about 1,000% increase at Oracle, another 700 to 800 increase over at AWS, Alphabet and Meta spending over 270 billion each. Nvidia is getting absolutely filthy rich. And well, just another prettier way to show you that's the trend. It's straight up. Big tech is spending a lot of money right now. But we got to get to the problem. What is the problem with OpenAI throwing around this number right here, this $1.4 trillion of AI infrastructure build out, whether that be from Nvidia, whether that be from AMD, Broadcom, whoever it is, they're spending a ton of money right now. And these deals aren't any joke. Nvidia is saying, hey, we'll invest $100 billion in OpenAI if you guys spend, $300 to $500 billion on our equipment. This $100 billion is very important to OpenAI. They aren't making money right now. So if they want to spend $1.4 trillion on this AI infrastructure build out because they think the demand is there to support that building out, and hence the money will make up for itself in the long term. I guess at this point, the really, really long term, they need this. They need cash now. And I know we already played our little game at the beginning of this video, but let's take some time to walk through three of the biggest and most egregious problems when it comes to the AI or more so the open AI bubble. Number one on our list of 3 items, the first thing we really already mentioned is this $1 trillion. And this affects you, the taxpayer, the average worker, the most. Let me explain. As human beings in this world, as someone who strives to be a somewhat productive member to society, we want jobs so that way we can make money, spend money, have a good life, and contribute to the economy in a positive way, right? Well, right now, that spending, that contribution from people like you and me, isn't actually contributing that much towards GDP growth. In fact, spending on AI data centers is so massive that it's taken a bigger chunk of GDP growth than shopping, than you and I going to the store and using our money from our job. Now, why does that matter? Why is that important? Well, if AI capital expenditure, the buying, the purchasing, the building of these massive data centers, the installation of all this power equipment, the manufacturing of all this compute, that's making GDP growth appear a lot stronger than it otherwise would without it. And yeah, that's pretty obvious, especially by this graph. But what you don't see on the surface is that when GDP growth, or GDP in general, starts to decline, GDP growth starts to slow down, companies get a little bit worried. They say, oh no, a recession or a slower period of spending from the consumer, from people like you and me is coming. Well, we got to cut costs. And you know what cost is usually the easiest to cut from business? That's going to be your employee. And we're seeing exactly that. In October, we just saw one of the worst year-over-year jumps in job cuts since 2003, during the bleeding out of the dot-com bubble. Now, that could really be for a multitude of reasons, but we'll just cover the quick and most important 2. Number 1, as we just said, if GDP growth is slowing, then it makes sense for businesses to start cutting costs and hence lay off people, lay off employees. But what seems much more likely and more obvious at this point especially is AI makes people more productive. And if you have a software engineer that's able to complete some coding task with the help of, say, a Claude or a ChatGPT in the same amount of time it would take those 6 software engineers to get it done in the past, then does it really make sense to be paying 6 software engineers $200,000, $300,000 each when you could just be doing it with one and a $100 Claude subscription? As you may have guessed, the white collar job market is getting absolutely annihilated right now, and that kind of makes sense. AI is making a lot of these white collared responsibilities like coding, like automation, a lot easier. And think about it even a little bit deeper than that. Right now in the news, if you announce that you're going to be spending a few billion to hundreds of billions of dollars on AI, generally speaking, your stock goes up. When your stock goes up, you have more money to invest in AI, right? It's like this self-fulfilling cycle. The more you talk about AI, the more you invest in AI, the more people believe in your company, and therefore you have more funds that you can invest, and it creates this virtuous spending cycle. So if you want to get some more money and be able to make a massive announcement like this one that NVIDIA is making a deal with OpenAI to deploy eventually 10 gigawatts of data center compute, then you're going to need some money. And what better way to get some quick cash than just cutting some of your workforce, especially if things stay as productive and as efficient with AI as it did before with another 1,000 plus employees. Is that sad? Is that frustrating? Well, yeah, of course it is for the employee. But at the end of the day, corporate profits are at an all-time high. So if corporate profits are at an all-time high while cutting cost, then these businesses are more than happy to do that, especially these large corporations where lower level employees don't really have too much of an impact when it comes to the bottom line of these financial statements, right? I feel like if we can't acknowledge that, then it's just a little bit naive. And so number 1 is really a warning. If this whole AI thing doesn't work out, if all this AI spending doesn't really come to fruition in any sort of significant profit, then it's really going to result in even more layoffs than we've already seen. Yeah, sure, these companies may not have to spend as much money if this whole AI spend thing doesn't come to fruition, but if they stop spending their money, then this GDP growth is going to go. So part 2 of the AI bubble. It's again related to this spending, as simple as it may seem, but this time not related to the job market. Number 2. So to start this part off, I want you to listen to what the CFO of OpenAI has to say about funding this next frontier of AI chips, because at the end of the day, if you want to have the best software, the best AI product, the best large language model, then you need the best chips. You need the NVIDIA Blackwell. You need the NVIDIA Rubin Ultra platform coming out 2026, 2027. And to do that, you need a lot of money. And because OpenAI is losing a lot of money right now, they need to find alternative approaches to getting money to spend on AI infrastructure. So besides, making money to spend money, because that's way too much to ask for right now, what other ways can a company like OpenAI get the money to invest in this build out?
And so this is where we're looking for an ecosystem of banks, private equity, maybe even governmental the ways governments can come to bear.
Meaning like a federal subsidy or something?
Meaning like just first of all, the backstop, the guarantee.
Whoa, whoa. Wait, what?
Banks, private equity, maybe even governmental.
Don't worry. I can finish that for you. A government bailout, a government backstop. Banks, private credit, government bailout. Now this is where the discussion gets a whole lot more complicated, because there's a few things at play here. One, we have some of the concerns that Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, has warned us about. That, hey, if the United States or whatever country in the world isn't the first one to get a control of AI, to get a control of the most competitive and potent models in the world, then that could ultimately end up in the hands of somebody that we don't want it to end up in the hands of. Think of a country that might be more apt to a conflict, more apt to using that in some harmful or not beneficial way to humanity, right? And so why is that important to bring up? Well, the United States is a capitalistic economy, which means it's up to the market to decide who wins and who loses. If you have the better product and people are willing to spend money on your product or service, then you're going to win in the long term. That's how a free market works. If ChatGPT builds the best model that everybody's willing to use over, say, your Anthropic, your Google, your Microsoft, whoever else is competing on this front, then OpenAI should win. They should get the majority of the revenue, and that's what will happen because the free market behaves that way. And so why is that important? Well, you see, usually in a free market, a company like OpenAI will have to make money. They'll have to raise money through debt, through equity, to get the money to build out their AI data center infrastructure. Now, to get where the CFO is talking about right now, to have the most frontier models, to have the best chips on the market, you certainly need a lot more than $0, the amount of money that OpenAI has right now. And so the majority of their investment money is coming from private investors, and then eventually public investors if they end up going public on the stock market exchange. But the one way that creates more of a, let's say, anti-competitive market, a non-free market, is through government intervention. We see this in China, right? A communist party subsidizes companies that they deem will help China as a country become more competitive on the global landscape. And that's exactly the problem that we kind of run into here. On one hand, you have this concern from the United States, like, hey, if we don't get the strongest and the best performing models, and somehow that gets into the hands of an adversary or somebody who's not willing to use it for the benefit of humankind, then that's a serious problem, which would indicate that investment from the US government in the best models, in the best AI infrastructure would make sense. But then on the other hand, you all of a sudden make the landscape a whole lot less competitive because you're giving advantages to, let's say, OpenAI, who's looking for a government handout, let's just say. If you start shoveling money at a company like OpenAI, then competitors like Anthropic probably won't be too happy, probably won't be too competitive when They're literally forced out of the market by their very own government. And so after hearing this and hearing the absolute outrage on social media that this company was basically asking for a government bailout, and again, she didn't explicitly say that, but looking for a government backstop for their loans, for their financing, is quite the indication of a bubble. Instead of reading Sam Altman's 55-page storybook justifying why this isn't asking for a government bailout and why OpenAI is definitely willing to compete in this market and not get any sort of advantage from the government, let me just get you the summary from ChatGPT, OpenAI's product. How ironic would that be? I did not look at this before, so I don't know what it's going to say, but summarize this in 3 to 4 sentences. OpenAI clarified that it is not seeking or supporting government guarantees for its data centers, emphasizing that failed companies should not be bailed out by taxpayers. The company does, however, support the idea of governments building and owning their own AI infrastructure for public benefit, of course, and as discussed, limited government support only for U.S. semiconductor manufacturing to strengthen domestic supply chains. This is where things get a little bit squirrely. It's like, yeah, hey, we don't want support from the government directly, but if there's somehow a way that like you guys could own the AI infrastructure and then we didn't have to pay for it, that would be best case, because then, you know, we could get the revenue from our ChatGPT models, but then you guys could pay, and us as the taxpayers could pay for the AI infrastructure to actually operate and run. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, like obviously that would be great, right? That would make for the best business model in the world. You don't have to pay for anything. You just reap the rewards. So we're back to the bubble points before we get to the last and certainly not least, number 3, quick review. Number 1, AI infrastructure spending makes up a lot of the economy's GDP growth at this point, and that number is only ballooning right now. If this doesn't pan out how we expect, then the greater economy will suffer. 2, it's a lot of money, and if you're going to spend 1.4 trillion over the next 4 or 5 years, then you better have a lot of money on your hands. And what better way to have a lot of money on your hands than ask for it from the US government? At least have the US government build out the infrastructure, and then you, of course, can use that infrastructure. It would save you a lot of money, obviously. And finally, number 3 is this 26 gigawatts worth of computing capacity. Wow, what does this beautiful picture of the Cliffs of Moher from Ireland have to do with anything about what we talked about? If anything, this seems like the most far connection that you could possibly make to the world of technology and AI. This beautiful, natural cliff site in Ireland. Well, I thought this would be thematic and fall right in line with our discussion because the CFO we just heard talk about a potential government bailout, potential financing options in the form of banking or private credit. She's actually from Ireland, and she made this point herself. Ireland right now has somewhere between 6 to 8 gigawatts of capacity and plans to have 22 gigawatts of installed renewable capacity by 2030. Did you hear the number that OpenAI is planning to deploy by 2030 over the next 4 or 5 years? If you didn't, let me remind you, 26 gigawatts. That's more power capacity than about 3 times Ireland right now, an entire country of people. You can think of 1 gigawatt of power capacity being able to power the homes of about 1 million people. Makes it nice and easy. And those big, ugly nuclear reactors that you see on the side of the road with the steam coming out of the top, those things are about 1 to 1.2 gigawatts on average. So I hope that puts into perspective just how much power capacity they're looking to build out over the next few years. And let's just say building out renewable capacity like nuclear, which is the most preferred source of energy right now across the globe. It's not exactly easy. There's a lot of hurdles, a lot of jump roping, a lot of red tape that you have to go through just to get that whole project started. So will OpenAI be able to build out this 26 gigawatts over the next 4 to 5 years? It seems ambitious, but to be fair, in 2023, they had about 200 megawatts. In 2024, they had about 2 gigawatts. So we're talking about a 10x in deployment right there. And if they were to 10x again, they got it covered. Again, jumping from 0.2 to 2 and then 2 to 26 is definitely a little more steep, but I guess we'll have to wait and see if that's possible. The energy infrastructure plays just seem like a no-brainer to me right now. So I hope this video helps to catch you up on the whole AI bubble drama right now and some of the things we're seeing with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the government bailout that's coming, the preemptive government bailout that they're asking for. There's a lot of interesting things going on here. And I will say, I don't think it's entirely clear either way what's going to happen. I've made plenty of videos talking about how the AI industry is certainly not a bubble, especially companies like Nvidia. I think that stock should be probably $275 to $300 right now, based on just a comparison to other companies like Microsoft, like Google. But that's besides the point. I think there's an argument to be had both sides. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Do you think it's a clear telltale sign when we have CEOs like Sam Altman raging at very simple questions like how do you plan on affording all this AI infrastructure build out, which is a very valid and fair question to have, especially considering some of the things we just talked about. Again, to be fair, he probably has been asked this every day for the past year or so he's probably sick of hearing about it. And two, Alex Karp absolutely tearing Michael Burry apart. I don't even know why he's concerned about what Michael Burry is doing. At the end of the day, you've made a lot of retail traders a lot of money. You've made your company, your employees a ton of money, and you're basically one of the most important software companies in the world right now, the most important enterprise software stack in the world according to CEO of Nvidia, Jensen Huang. You already won at the end of the day. Who cares what Michael Burry has to say? He's gotten everything wrong since 2008 anyways. All I know is Nvidia is absolutely winning right now, and they're going to continue to win into the near and medium and long term future. So let me know what you guys think of the AI bubble. Where do you stand? All right, that's it for me. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.